Next, we are going to hear from Stone, Paige Wooden, and Chhavi Chuahan. Chhavi is going to be joining us online, and Anne and Paige are here. Chhavi is Director of Scientific Outreach at the American Society for Investigative Pathology and Director of Continuing Medical Education Program at the Journal of Molecular Diagnostics. I won't go into all her accolades because they are enormous. Anne Stone is Marketing and Communications Committee member of the Workforce Equity Survey. She's a marketing professional in scholarly and educational publishing with a career over 3 decades. Paige Wooden serves as Assistant Director, Publication Strategy and Statistics for the American Geophysical Union. She works on data projects, editorial operations, post-publication metrics, and member data.
Hello, welcome. Thank you very much for inviting us to talk and introduce the Workplace Equity Survey to you. I'm joined online with Chhavi Chuahan, and Paige Wooden is here, and she'll be joining in a second. Chhavi is, among her many accolades, the co-chair of the Workplace Equity Survey, along with Simone Taylor, who was a founder of it. And I am here joining because of the support of many colleagues and mentors myself, including one of the founders of the Workplace Equity Survey, Susan Spilka. So first, just a little introduction, the background of the survey. In 2018, as I mentioned, 3 women started a grassroots effort to launch a survey because heuristically we knew that publishing was majority female and majority white, but there was no data really actually to refer to. And so they took it upon themselves to develop a survey instrument that would capture people's lived experience of workplace culture. At the time, the idea of collecting a data point around diversity statements was a novel idea. It was only 2018, but if you think back to that time in the pre-pandemic years, there's been so much that's happened since. So we do have a benchmark that starts with data from before Black Lives Matter and the systematic racism was an outcry worldwide when George Floyd was murdered. So as they progressed and produced the report in 2018, C4DISC was formed. C4DISC is a member organization of other scholarly communications member organizations and individual membership organizations. So you can be a member as an organization of some of these or as an individual participant. And I welcome you all to investigate them as you pursue your careers. After the founding of C4DISC, it seemed like a really good home for the Workplace Equity Survey because it would give us the opportunity to involve more people and get a wider distribution of future work. Now we're in 2023, and we've just launched the survey again under the auspices of C4DISC, which allowed us to have success with getting that broader reach. This is just a quick introduction to some of the statistics we're putting together now with the help of Paige and our colleague Camille Lemieux from Springer Nature. They're doing the heavy lifting of a massive amount of data analysis right now. So these are preliminary findings, and I should mention as such, we have not done, they're descriptive statistics only, and so we won't be able to dive deep down if you ask us really hard statistical questions later. But taking some quick wins away, in terms of the industry-wide survey, we saw gains in global outreach and global participation, increasing the participation by 48%. And that was widely distributed, not only by geographic region, but also by respondents identifying as neurodiverse or disabled, and also by race and ethnicity and gender. So we have more representative samples, and we're hoping the sample sizes will be such that comparisons for statistical significance will be able to be made. But also some other positive gains, workplace culture. We asked if people felt their workplace was supportive, and we've seen a nice lift in that in the period of 5 years. And mentorship, participation in mentorship is also increasing. And I thought for the GW publishing program audience, you may be interested in learning more about the culture that you're going into and the opportunities you have to connect with others that can help you in your career. So we focused on that little slice of the massive amounts of data today. There'll be much more in the full report, and we're hoping that you will hold steady until the beginning of January or the end of January when we're hoping to release it. The main takeaway here, though, is on the theme of diversity. Another major gain was that over 60%, from 60% in 2018 to 89%, people agree or strongly agree that their employers have a stated diversity values. Now, scratch the surface on that, and you can imagine that it's not as rosy as a vast majority think that we've accomplished all the challenges that we need to for diversity and inclusion. So Paige is going to go into a little more detail on that. Let's advance the slides from there. Or yeah, my notes are here.
All right. So we looked at early career demographics, and on the left-hand side, we see that 28% of the survey respondents were between 16 and 34. We actually had two age groups as a part of this. It's 16 to 24 and 25 to 34 for this one. And then in 2018, the age group was 20 to 35, and 34% identified as 20 to 35. So we have fewer people at this point of this survey identifying as the younger age groups. Average salary, we saw that it's about, so for 16 to 24-year-olds, and we took out zeros, we're seeing at about 37,000 annual salary, with women slightly higher, but we do see that we only have 2 men and 5 non-binary individuals in this age group. And in the age group of 25 to 34, let's see, the total was about $51,000 a year on average, with men making the most at 57,000. Non-binary making the most at 57,000, then men at 53,000, and women at 50K. So there's some more analysis to be done and some more work to be done with making the workplace more equitable so that women can get ahead and the same opportunity as men. But I do think it's interesting that the non-binary folks are have the highest salary in the gender group. And then on the right-hand side, some more demographics of the younger age groups. We have 15% of the 16 to 24 age group identifying as non-binary, and 80% women. And in the 25 to 35 age group, about 8% non-binary. And compare this to 2018, we have 2% of the younger age group identifying as non-binary. So we see some more diversity in gender as well. And I thought this is probably the statistic that jumped out at me the most. 59% of the youngest age group identifies LGBTQ+, and 38% of the 25 to 34 in this year's survey. And then compare that to only 13% of the younger age group in the 2018 survey. We do have different nomenclature, so that's something to think about as people start to, when you take a survey and see where you fall into the categories. And we used, for the 2018 survey, gay, lesbian, or bisexual was used instead of LGBTQ+ wording. And then finally, as Anne mentioned, we see more people of color responding to the survey, 30% compared to 24% in the younger age groups. Okay, so we wanted to focus on workplace culture. This is early career, and on the left-hand side, which is age, connected with age, and then with gender on the right-hand side. We do find that the majority feel respected and valued in a culture that is supportive by age. We will look at another slide that dives into more demographics. But so we can see here that the first question is it, how strongly do you agree or disagree that your employer is committed to creating an equitable workplace? By age, it's about 80% across all age groups. Feel respected and valued at the workplace. It's a little bit higher for younger people, and that workplace culture is supportive. Again, it's a tad bit higher. As Anne was saying, we haven't done descriptive statistics, so we don't have statistical significance with these numbers, but we generally see that they're all similar for age groups. We see a little bit different when we divide up by gender and the next slide by some other demographics, so that non-binary folks feel that their employer is a little less committed to creating an equitable workplace, little less feeling respected and valued, and that the workplace culture is supportive. So the workplace culture question specifically, my employer is committed. How strongly do you agree? My employer is committed to creating an inclusive and equitable workplace. We see the disparities between the employer's stated values and lived experience exist in across some demographics. So these are actually flipping to those folks who strongly disagreed or disagreed with the statement. Not surprised from the flipping of the previous graph, this non-binary folks have more strongly disagree or disagree that their employer is committed to creating an inclusive, equitable workplace than men and women. So again, this is those folks who strongly disagreed or disagreed. Neurodivergent, a little bit more satisfied, but still there's a big difference between those that are disabled or neurodivergent and non-disabled who strongly disagree with this statement or disagree. And identifying as LGBTQ+, again, 23% of those who identify as such strongly disagree or disagree that their employer is committed to create an inclusive workplace. And then identifying as a person of color or responding that they're in one of the minority race or ethnicity groups. So 23% strongly disagreed or disagreed compared to 50% white. So I think there's still work to be done. Sorry that these animations are a little bit off. So when looking at mentorship, mentorship opportunities actually have improved for everyone. What I don't show, which I'll tell you about, is the 2018 responses, which is why we say it's the outcome looks that it has improved. So the question is, have you had a mentor? Have you ever had a mentor or have one now, or a coach? And those are the green bars. And then the gray bars show the proportion of respondents who said having a mentor had a measurable impact on their career. So we see that women and non-binary folks are more likely to have a mentor. At non-binary, 45% said they've had a mentor, men only 39%, and women 49%. And I will say that with this, there is a difference with age group. So we have more younger people that identify as non-binary and women than men. And so it's also more likely that the older age group will not had a mentor or say that they've had a mentor. So younger folks are more likely to have a mentor, and younger folks are also more likely to be women and non-binary. So there could be some connections with age here. And then in the 2018 survey, only 25% of non-binary folks, and it's a much smaller number, but only 25% say they had a mentor, and only 41% of women said they had a mentor. So we've seen increases in those who've had mentors or coaches by gender. Also disability, we don't really see any differences here between those who are have a disability or are neurodivergent compared to those who are not. But in 2018, those with a disability, it's similar, 46% that said they have a mentor. As far as LGBTQ plus goes, this also has increased since 2018. 50% of the respondents said they have, who are LGBTQ plus, said they have a mentor, while in 2018, only 34% said they had a mentor. And then people of color, this is actually the highest, one of the highest groups or identities who said that they've had a mentor is those people of color, which is great to see. And that in 2018, only 40% of people of color said that they've had a mentor or had a mentor at that time. And so mentorship opportunities have improved for everyone, for many identity groups.
So behind the data is the lived experience of the people that we work with in publishing. And so in 2018, we collected these anonymous comments into blog posts. Some appeared on the Scholarly Kitchen and some now appear on the C4DISC site under the Voices section. And if you've taken Randy Towson's publishing ethics course, they have been required reading. Now we're going to be able to update them in 2023, and I've selected some of the comments that were intersection with people who reported having a disability or were neurodivergent or both. And what it brings to mind, especially the top left and bottom right, is the challenge that we put on people of minority or underserved populations. Scholarly Kitchen has several articles on the diversity tax, which, if you haven't heard that term, is really related to these statements of saying that the person who are struggling with already a greater burden on them to succeed in their workplace are now challenged above that to represent the cohort that they are part of or to fight for their own benefits. So we really do need to think more broadly about how we are approaching this. Again, the data behind this is that 20% of disabled respondents disagree that their employer is committed to in creating an inclusive workplace, compared to 11% of all respondents. So I'm happy to say that, hold on till the end, and I've got some relief in sight. Then when we get to race and ethnicity, we also have the same challenge of people needing to represent themselves, employee resource groups, that kind of thing. But they don't feel that the work goes far enough. And often what we've seen in the quote at the bottom, it talks about the importance of your line manager. And we also saw that in 2018, the individual experience of how you work with your line manager, and especially if your line manager doesn't have the same background or personal profile as you do, can be challenging because there's no training offered to people as they advance in their career to say, okay, now how are you going to deal with this policy in your practice? Because the policies themselves aren't actually how people do their work. So going back to mentorship, these are a few quotes from people. I think it's interesting to call out that although the data shows that people of Black, or I think it was people of color, found that they were more likely to have a mentor or mentorship, mentee relationship. But in this quote, somebody said that it seems harder to find mentors because senior leaders don't have interest in mentoring them. I think that goes back to finding people that look like yourselves, that you can look up to. We see that across across the whole diversity and inclusion conversations in many contexts. But where you don't have a model to follow, it's harder to look up to that person. That said, there are many other networks that people can go to for mentorship. And so it's important to think about how you find those people, and starting at a graduate program like this is a great place to start. But really distressing is the idea that people are put into competitive situations to get mentorship. It's sort of the opposite that you would want to have as a culture, because you want to bring people up with a mentorship program and not have them against each other. So that's my 2 cents on it. Then just touching on work-life balance, in the delving into all the comments and doing all the segmentation, one of the things that we found behind the data is that the gains about flexibility are maybe being lost, but some organizations after the pandemic are holding on to them. So I pulled out the examples of where it's working. But when we asked for comments about work-life balance, I'm not standing in the camera, there is a challenge with level of work. In scholarly communications, we know that open access has meant that it's not just open access, but in fact, the research publication has exploded. It continues to grow exponentially just because of our needs for advancing knowledge. But as such, so many people in the workforce feel like their workload is high. And so all the well-being programs and work-life balance programs don't help them if their workload is too high and their manager doesn't support them. So again, modeling as a manager what work-life balance means is really important. And if you're feeling that your manager and your line manager isn't modeling the policies or practices, then there's a disconnect there, and it's something to be aware of and maybe work to elevate and make visible. So I mentioned that there's a little bit of hope. One of the first things that C4DISC did was bring together groups of people who volunteered on developing toolkits to actually help people make change happen in their workforce. So in their workplaces. So there are several toolkits available that you can find on the C4DISC website. Right now, these 3 have been published, and coming soon is the toolkit for accessibility and disability. There's been a lot of work done in the business, as Angela was talking about, in terms of making our products more accessible, working with authors to help them. But in the business, we need to actually make things better as well. So just a couple, I'm open to questions with Paige and Chhavi online. I put some thought starters out there for things to reflect on that might give you pause or make you want to share a comment or thought.
Ready for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to play the volume down.
Yeah.
I'm ready to tango. Oh, there I am. I'm Donna Johnson. I'm with the United States Pharmacopoeia. And pardon me if I missed this in the beginning of your presentation, but I was surprised with the whole focus on mentorship, and especially some of the comments about how the senior workers didn't necessarily have time or willingness to mentor, and also the need to find senior workers to look up to. That the survey itself didn't include any senior workers. I mean, there was no, the age group wasn't.
Represented up to 65 plus.
So in other words, you did survey older workers as well.
It was an entire industry. It wasn't, we didn't have a sample set to go out to survey. So we sent out, the mechanism was that it was open from May 30th to the mid-July. And we went through our partner organizations, through C4DISC, through social media channels and blog posts, through different publishing associations globally, to get the word out. So the sample is, we can't say how representative it is of our entire industry because it's self-selected, but at the same time, it is 1,700 plus.
Yeah, and for this talk, we focused on the
Okay, that answers
did
it.
have
Thank you.
30,
Yeah.
so just quickly, 33 respondents, 16 to 24 years old, 391 respondents, 25 to 34, 469, 35 to 44, 317, 45 to 54, 235, 55 to 64, and 65 years plus 46 respondents.
Okay, so somewhere the data about the opinions of the older workers is somewhere. It's just not in this presentation
Right,
because you
'cause
were
we
focused on
segmented.
students, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we segmented on the
Gotcha.
earlier cohorts.
I was looking for myself in there and I didn't see me. And I was like, well, I'd love to mentor somebody, but apparently nobody wants me to do that because they don't, what I think is not there. So thank you.
Well, actually, that does give me the opportunity to share that I've participated in the Society for Scholarly Publishing's membership mentorship program twice. The first time I was a mentor, I think I'm being assigned as a mentor again. And so there are formal programs within organizations, sometimes the larger organizations, but smaller organizations may not have the infrastructure to support such a thing. Again, based on workloads, timing, structure. So there are many other ways to look for these resources, whether you go to a Society for Scholarly Publishing organization or the ALPSP in the UK. There's many different opportunities to look for mentorship programs formally or look informally for mentors and allies in across the industry. But getting involved is a great way to find more people to help you. Yeah, and that's a teaser for the full report. Will be available in January, and Paige and Camille will have done heavy lifting by then.
Questions online? More in the room?
All right, this is Pooja in the room here for those of you online. I will be sharing one question, but I want you to know that we've received a list of resources from Chhavi Chuahan, and I've released them on the Discord chat. They'll also be made available on the conference website with all of the slide decks and information from this presentation. So if you're interested in more of the data sets and some of their methodology, you'll find it through those links. Now, we did receive a question here from Michael Fitzgerald, who's joining us online, who asks, does ageism factor into inclusivity? Many older workers are discriminated against because of their age.
I'd be happy to answer that. There was a notable difference that we didn't mention in this analysis, that in the 2018 results, I believe it was that the people who felt less likely to be supported in age group were the younger cohorts, but in this 2023, it was the older. So yeah, there was a difference. Now statistically significant, I don't know, but it was notable to me being of that cohort.